Experience the most efficient system for delivering sulfur and phosphate to meet your crop's needs with Smart Nutrition MAP plus MST.
I am your host, Lindsay Smith, for Beef Market Update, which I don't usually get to do, and I don't also get to usually see our guest, Ann Wasko, with Gateway Livestock Exchange. But here we are, Ann. Welcome.
Here we are. Thank you. Good to see you too.
Yeah, this is exciting. Okay, so as per usual, with the Beef Market Update, we typically start in the south, work our way north. How did the cattle markets fare this week?
Okay, well, in the U.S., especially the southern trade, Texas and Kansas, they did kind of catch this week, and they traded steady at 181. So that was good to see. Kind of just wasn't another week of down. The north actually, the dress trade in Nebraska a little bit stronger than last week. 291 to 292 delivered. That's kind of 4 to 5 higher than they really struggled last week. I think it was more a timing thing. So that was good to see. The cutout, $4.50 lower than last week. The choice is at 307 last night, and the select about $11 back. Now, again, Sean and I have talked about that. Seasonality says that once we get into this time of year, September, October, that's really a struggle for these wholesale prices and demand, and I think that's exactly it. So until we kind of get till the middle of mid-October, that's kind of the storyline. So not a surprise to see the cutout losing a bit of ground there. Okay. Now, bringing it back home to Western Canada, we saw Alberta fat cattle prices 405 to 406 delivered dress. That's steady to 5 lower, kind of traded at the low end of last week's range. And so that means when Canfax does their weekly average this week, it's probably going to be in that 243, 244 area. So certainly it's come off the highs of the summer. But it, again, from a seasonal perspective, pretty much on track.
Okay. Now, we do have some trade numbers for July.
Still the data is, and we talked about this with the June data, still a little bit impacted from the strike. And so production numbers were still low in July, and before you get things ramped up, especially in terms of trade, it showed up in the data. So for the month of July, we saw beef exports down 7%. And just again to reiterate on that point, June and July were two of the smallest months we've seen in years. So it really had an impact, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. So for the year, so if we count up year to date, 7 months in 24, we're still sitting up 3% in volume and 1% in value. So I think, we talk about how important trade is to the beef demand story, and it really still is a good story, even though we've kind of stubbed our toe, if you will, for both June and July, but for understandable reasons. Just to break down some of the key countries that we export to, we were down 14% to the US in July, but year to date, we're still up 3%. Japan, we actually gained a point. We're up 1% in July, so that was good news. And we're up 6% year to date. So again, good solid news into our strongest Asian country. Mexico, we're up 7% in July, but down 5% year to date. That's got a lot to do with the peso, though, in terms of why are we down. And South Korea, we're up 1% year to date. So those 4 countries are our main, take the bulk of Canada's beef exports.
Okay. And good point there of just the story that it does tell on being able to move product, of how incredibly important it is that we are capable of moving product. Now we do have, and this is fun, and somewhat confusing, so we'll clarify. We do have some August import numbers. So yes. We're sort of off by a month in imports and exports, but that's okay. We'll cover it, and eventually it all catches up.
Yeah. 2 different departments, so 2 different timings. So August beef imports, and we've talked about how much smaller our Canadian cow kill is here in 24. So we're down 16%, wow. 1/6, in 2024 compared to last year. So, and that's been a common trait, even in the US. We see the cow kill off substantially as well. So when our cow kill is down, guess what we're short of? We're short of that lean trim beef that we call it. So that's where the bulk of our increases of our imports are coming from. So overall, our imports in August were up 2%, but year to date, we're sitting up 13%. To the U.S., from the U.S., we're down 6% and down 5% year to date. The storyline is Australia and New Zealand, of course. From Australia, year to date, we're up 125%. From New Zealand, we're up 53%. So again, pretty clear what's going on. We're short of cow beef. It's coming from the two largest countries that we would typically import lean trim from.
So now that to me suggests that demand is still strong, that is quite inelastic. Is that the case?
It is. Canadians tend to eat a pretty static amount of ground beef or ground beef type products. And so when we're short of it with domestic, we import it. And historically, that's been exactly what goes on, and that's what's happening today.
Mm-hmm. I certainly saw, I would say, I saw some social media shares of seeing, where did this beef come from? Australia. So, people notice, certainly, especially if you're a producer, you notice these things. But we love our burgers. We're going to have our burgers no matter where it comes from.
And talking about, and I don't have retail prices to talk about, but anecdotally, doing some traveling this week and did see some great sale prices on ground beef. I'm out in British Columbia right now, so there are still some very good deals on ground beef out there if you're looking for one.
Okay, I always am. We are also a family that eats a lot of beef, and we'll continue to, regardless. Okay, so now you did mention a few of the sort of that word seasonal coming in. This isn't a stellar time seasonally for prices, but we have bucked this trend some years. So is this year sort of playing out more on trend than we've seen in the last few years?
Yeah, interesting to talk about seasonality, because that's kind of the question of the day as we head into the fall run, especially. And I think, looking back on the last few years, we've really, as you say, your words, kind of bucked the trend and kind of traded a lot more flat, especially through the fourth quarter. And I think my explanation is going to be, and it's my story, so I can tell my story. But I think over the last few years, we've been moving to this newer, higher price trend. And so when you're moving from, historically a price area we've traded at for a number of years, and now we've moved to a new price area, you kind of don't see the seasonality so much while you're making that move higher or lower, in this case, higher. But now we're here. I think this is kind of where we're going to trade for a bit in terms of big price range. But so that means the seasonality is likely going to return. So I would expect to see lower slaughter cow prices as we head into the fall run. They typically make their low in November. If you're going to bet some money, that's where I'd put it. Same with calf prices, although we're still trading well over a year ago prices on cull cows, and calf prices are coming closer to last year's levels, but we're still above. But I do think we're going to see them, continue to work lower just because of that strong seasonal trend on really all of our classes of cattle for those reasons. This is when the bulk of the run happens.
That's right. Yeah. And it didn't start nearly as early either as we saw in the past few years, right? More on trend.
Huge drought impact the last couple of years, so that really stretched your run out. This year, it's been super quiet. Where I live in southwest Saskatchewan, a phenomenal grass year. Everything's going to, stay at grass as long as possible, and so it puts your run into your more typical fall pattern. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Okay. The next time we talk, Anne, I'm going to ask you where we're going to find more cull cows if we're down that far. But we've got time. Study up on that one.
Okay.
Let me know where we're going to find them. All right. Okay. And we'll next time we talk, we'll talk about that one. All right. Anne Wasko, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me here for the Beef Market Update.
Thanks. See you.